We have to understand the world in which we live so we can relate to it. We can be successful in it, not for the sake of the dunya. Ultimately for the sake of Allah. Whether our success is intellectual, educational, financial, whatever it is. Ultimately it has to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it's not, then it will deter you, it will keep you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, going to the times of the prophets, during the time of Musa alayhi salam, magic flourished. It was the trend at that day. This is why Fir'aun called the magicians. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Musa alayhi salam the miracle that was suitable to the major trend of that time. So when he came, the best magicians could not compete with Musa alayhi salam. So that was the most profound miracle. Isa alayhi salam, he came at the time when medicine flourished. And it was the most sought after profession and kind of education. Isa alayhi salam came with what? He could heal the ill people, the leper, even revive the dead people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the miracle that people could relate to, people could understand, people could appreciate. That goes back to the principle we said you have to speak to the people using the language they can relate to. The Prophet ﷺ was sent at the time, as we said, when the Arabs have reached the peak of eloquency, of language, beauty, of literary language. The Prophet ﷺ came with the Quran that obviously no human could ever produce anything even close to it. And that was the challenge, the everlasting challenge that will remain until the Day of Judgment. But the Arabs at the time of the Prophet ﷺ reached that peak of language, the peak of eloquence. So it shows that this is a recurrent theme in the messages of all the prophets and messengers that gives us a clear indication that the world in which we live, we cannot shun it all of it just like that, keep ourselves away and say, no, we have, for example, to use the same language, we have to use the same mentality. That has in reality no room in the methodologies or this recurrent theme in the lives and the missions of the prophets and messengers. So we have to be flexible. And this is what Islam actually teaches us. And there are principles in Islam that ensure that we are flexible enough to relate to the world in which we live. And I will mention some examples even from the Prophet ﷺ. The question is, what is the trend that we have in our world today? So we need to understand the world in which we live today so we can really relate to it. Now you cannot, by the way, use the language, and that's the problem with translation. And many of the problems that have taken place among the people who follow the Sunnah, and this is why they are fighting this is one of the reasons why they are fighting among one another, is that they are using language that was used about 700 or even 1,000 years ago, that people could easily relate to at that time. They're using it today, and even the Arabs today, the vast majority, more than 99%, are unable to comprehend it and assimilate it fully. And this is why Imam Ibn Nuqta, one of the great scholars of Islam, has a beautiful statement. He said, 3 types of people have destroyed this dunya. 3 types of people. Half doctors, half linguists, and half scholars. Half doctors have destroyed health of the people. Because it's just like when you meet someone, he had some kind of illness, and some of the symptoms were pain in the stomach. If they see you that you complain about pain in the stomach, they say, I have the medicine for you. They go and get you the medicine, but it's a totally different illness. So they could actually destroy your health by means of that. That's half a doctor. Half a linguist who have destroyed the language of the people. The language of the people. They break the language. They don't use it right. So the language starts to deteriorate. Even their understanding of what has been said in the language is deficient. People trust them because they are in the position of scholars, and they think that's the ultimate understanding, and thus they give an erroneous understanding. And half scholars who, they know one ruling, they know some of the aspects of Islam, but they don't know others. So they focus onto one aspect of Islam, and they don't realize by means of that focus, they are creating a state of imbalance. So they break 10 other rules on the other side, trying to establish one rule. And that's very common in the writings where the scholars talk about al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was walking, which is a famous incident, was walking with some of his companions. Ibn al-Qayyim narrates the story. He said, we were walking with our Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, and there were the Mughals who invaded Sham at that time. They were drinking, because the Mughals turned to Islam. They declared themselves Muslims. And their leader had a mu'adhin, and he had an imam to lead the prayer for him. So they declared themselves Muslims. Now these soldiers, they were drinking alcohol in the street. So one of the students of Ibn Taymiyyah rushes to them. He says to them, haram, fear Allah, that's haram. Ibn Taymiyyah, the great scholar, holds him back. Where are you going? He said, I want to enjoin the good, forbid the evil. He said, don't do that. Does Ibn Taymiyyah now disapprove of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil? No. But he does not break a rule against another rule. He makes sure that the whole of religion is in a state of harmony. And this is why the well-versed scholars, they are the ones who should be consulted when it comes to the major issues about this ummah. You might learn something, you're passionate about it, you want to teach it, but you see only one side, but you don't see the rest of it. So you might cause so much damage while you're with good intention. But the scholars see they see the full picture. So Ibn Taymiyyah told him, come back, don't do it. Because if you give them advice, if these people are awake, what would they be doing? Killing the Muslims. Which is far greater in evil, killing Muslims or drinking alcohol? Killing Muslims. Because the blood of a Muslim is more sacred in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than Al-Kaaba itself, than the sanctity of Al-Kaaba. So you see, this is how we should keep things in harmony, and only the well-versed scholars can do that. Now, this leads us to, as we deal with the world today, Islam is not a static religion. Islam is dynamic. We're dealing with realities. So we have to understand our reality. We have to understand the world around us, so that when we preach Islam, we speak the language the world understands today. And we have also, actually, some students of knowledge and scholars should dedicate their lives to understand the language of the early generations fully, so they can translate it in the language general masses, Muslim masses understand fully today. So what is the trend that we have in the world today? What is our world characterized or most, special when it comes to quality? What is the most? Is it wealth? Is it medicine compared to the rest of human history? Is it education? Is it science, technology, military? Is it any one of these? Actually, the Western civilization being material, mainly based on secularism and materialism and atheism, most of the material aspects of life are taken good care of. So they reached advanced levels in these aspects of life. We as Muslims, if we don't relate to the world, if we don't relate to the present reality today, taking these and others into consideration, we will not be able to establish ourselves in the world. Now, I'm not saying imitate the kuffar, be exactly like them. No. We have a special way of life that accommodates for all of these and much more. Because it places them in a hierarchy of needs, of motivation, that is so powerful that each one of these things serves a noble purpose and makes sense and adds to your spiritual welfare as well. Imagine wealth can add to your spiritual welfare. Do you believe this? Islam says that. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to Amr ibn al-As, نِعْمَ الْمَالُ الصَّالِحِ لِلرَّجُلِ الصَّالِحِ. Good money, pure money, is a good thing for a righteous person. And when the Prophet ﷺ says good, he's not talking about worldly matters. He's talking about matters of the akhirah. Because a righteous person knows how to use money, and it brings him closer to Allah. Same with medicine. Imam Shafi'i, he said Muslims have fallen short in studying medicine. He said half of science, half of knowledge is knowledge of the deen, and the other half is knowledge of medicine. And the Muslims have left this for people of other religion. He was reprimanding his people that take care of that science. This is why Imam Al-Qayyim himself, by the way, he was a doctor. He was a professional doctor. This is why he had the book, At-Tibb Al-Nabawi. So all these aspects of life are present today. Our deen, Al-Islam, accommodates all of these and places them in the right place and much, much more. So life is much deeper. The dimension of life in Islam is much deeper. Human potential in Islam is much greater than people have reached today. There are potentials Allah has put in us as human beings that can only be reached by following the divine guidance. Humans today have no clue about them. Except probably, there would be among the Muslims certain individuals who've reached that level. But in history, it's always been there. And it's been felt and it's been recorded. I will mention, inshallah, some examples. The question is, what underlies all of the above? I said, mainly most of these are material, or intended for material purposes. But in Islam, it's a totally different story, and we will explain that. Excellence generally today, you can trace all of the things that we mentioned, the educational, medicine, financial, technology, all of these. The bottom line of all of these, the main cause or the main asset that contributes to all of these is one, the human asset. Human asset. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. We shall show them our signs in the horizons, that means in the world, and in themselves, until it's proven to them, until they see that it is the truth. So as the signs that we have in the world, in the universe, as many signs we have in the world, we have similar signs within us that could be even far greater than the universal signs. The depth of human existence, the depth of human intelligence, the depth of human psychology, the depth of human behavior are fields that are still unknown, untapped into. And even with the advancement of science and even psychology today, do you know what they trace back human behavior and human existence to? Chemicals and neurocells. You ask them why humans do the things they do, why they feel the things they feel, they'll tell you there are chemical reactions taking place. They tell you there are there's electric energy goes through the brain. They tell you the how. They tell you the symptoms, the byproducts, but they can't tell you why. They can't. But they're so arrogant that they actually outlaw any other explanation but what they can come up with. And this is another problem, inshallah, on another occasion we can deal with. Now, what is human asset? We have different perspectives. Recently, or throughout the 20th century, it started around the World War I. They started to judge human potential and the human asset by one aspect of life, which is analytical abilities, which is intelligence quotient, which is IQ. Obviously, before that it was labor, as much as you could do, which is skill. But it's more about today, it's been over the 20th century, it's been mainly about IQ, intelligence, which is, they refer to intellectual ability, analytical faculty. You can think, analyze, you can store information. And over time, this has proved to be insufficient to detect human potential. Because it's only one aspect. It's single dimensional. So recently, the last 15 or 20 years, they came up with another concept, which is emotional intelligence, EQ. Emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is big business today. It's big business. And it's based mainly on neuropsychology. The study of the neurons and the chemicals and all that stuff.